and our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Not within the flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And I'm your Diet Coke with coffee, Mike.
And that's Jill, and that's my favorite combination.
That threw me off, Jill. But that's okay. We're Coltonless again, but we have a very special guest, friend of the podcast. Willow's back with us. How's it going, Willow?
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. My book tour is slowing down, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm here to talk about some horror movies and relax with y'all over a movie that's really fun, too. I'm really excited about this.
Yes, I mean, we're always excited when you're on the podcast, even more so when you're, just sought-after author. And, we're just sleuths that, make fun of horror movies and entertain ourselves for 2 hours once every 2 weeks. So we're going to get this episode started how we always start. What we've been consuming, what have we been watching, what have we been listening to, what have we been reading, all that kind of good stuff. And Mike, we're going to start with you. What have you been consuming?
Ooh, that's a good question, Ro. Okay, so first of all, I'll just get out of the way that I have indeed finally watched all the episodes of Agatha all along. Love it. It won't get me back into the Marvel universe, but it was nice to dip my toes back in it and kind of have a different experience with it than I've had for the last, how long has this been going on? 12 years? Something like that?
Eternity.
It feels like decades.
18 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like 6 months and, 60 years. That's all I have to say.
16 years. 16 years. I'm bad at math.
I got 8% in the last math course I took in university, so we won't talk about how bad I am. So I've had a couple of stressful weeks, but I haven't really been, I've wanted to watch movies, but I've also been very distracted with other shit going on, so I haven't watched as many movies as I've wanted to. It's so weird. I've been expired. I've been expired mentally.
Oh,
I've been inspired to watch movies, but I just haven't had the mental state to actually do that. But I did watch a couple. My friend came over a few days ago and we had our once a month trashy TV movie on Tubi night. And we watched this one called Cries Unheard, the Donna Yaklick story. It stars one of Charlie's Angels, Jacqueline Smith, or as we called her, Dollarama Sandra Bullock. And also, again, when she was doing TV movies right before she blew up, a young Hilary Swank, because Hilary Swank was for about 3 years, queen of the TV movies. And this was a movie, it was a very bad movie it was based on a true story, quote unquote, about a woman who has one date with a cop. And while on that date, he starts working out on his weight bench in his living room and pretty much, what do they call it? U-hauling. He gets her to U-haul and move into his house and take care of his stepdaughter from his dead wife, who is played by Hilary Swank, because she's upset. And turns out that he's, a kind of psychotic steroid guy, and it's, this whole abusive relationship. And it's an awful movie. It's terrible. Hilary Swank spends half the movie in trad wife, Little House on the Prairie garb, which is actually kind of fun because it's she just looks awful in it. And And anyway, if you like bad TV movies from the 90s, also it takes place in the 70s, but they don't give you any indication except the fact that everybody has really bad, like, pasted on sideburns. So we spent like 45 minutes trying to figure out what era this movie takes place in. But that was counteracted by, I finally got the 4K of one of my favorite movies ever, and that is Brian De Palma's Body Double, which we all know I'm a huge Brian De Palma fan. Willow and I recently watched Carrie on 4K, which looked amazing.
One of the best horror movies of all time. That was a great experience.
Truly. Like even if you're watching it on TV or like, you know, on like an old VHS or anything really, like it's just an experience. But like seeing it in 4K and the beautiful like grain and the lighting and the colors and, you know, just all the blood and fuck. Anyway, so
everything from the prom onward is like totally unreal in 4K.
It is, because it's just like red, you know, it's like you live in like constant like a siren going off, except there is no siren, but you're in a state of emergency because, you know, everything is just blood drenched and oh fuck, like what an experience. So yeah, check out Carrie on 4K. Unless you have to wait 6 months for it. Sorry, Willow.
Oh my god, Mike. It took unobstructed you like 6 months to get my disc to me, and like we made fun of that for like months.
Yeah,
you know, just
all
like
year. Yeah,
just the incompetence of like Canadian shipping to Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's wild. Luckily, I did not have to wait 6 months for Body Double. It came out like 2 months ago, maybe 2.5, if that, and I got it in like a week and a half. So that movie is just so good. Like, first of all, anyone who's seen Maxine, this is essentially one of the key texts that it is inspired by and like lifts a lot of scenes and moods and visuals from. Because, you know, Maxine does a lot of like 80s sleaze and exploitation and like thrillers and stuff. And yeah, this is definitely one of the like kind of like trinity of movies that it cribs from, and it's just this like great sleazy, like Brian De Palma, you know, riffing on Hitchcock as he always does, but with like sprinklings of like porn and like Slumber Party Massacre in. It's like, yeah, Hitchcock directed Slumber Party Massacre and also porn and also Frankie Goes to Hollywood music videos. It's just this gorgeous, like, beautiful, very 1984 movie. Like, all the costumes are 1984. Everybody's wearing these insane outfits with, like, giant shoulder pads and huge Jackie O glasses. Everybody's hair is gigantic. The walls are all, like, black and, like, wallpapered, and everything is shaped weird, and there's throw pillows everywhere. So it's just like so 80s, and it just reminded me how much I fucking love this movie. And 80s Brian De Palma is mostly excellent with a couple of, you know, missteps. But yeah, that's honestly like all I've been watching. It really got me in the mood to like go rewatch Sisters and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how the week goes. Ro, what have you been consuming and watching and experiencing?
Yeah, this is kind of, this is 2 episodes in a row for me that, like, not a whole lot. It's just been hectic. You know, Halloween, always an exciting time, but I don't think I mentally prepared myself for how hectic Halloween is with a kid and getting everything ready and, you know, going.
Oh my god, her costume was amazing, by the way.
Yes, Ghostface.
Yeah,
very successful. I did watch a couple things. I will say beforehand, just because I'm really excited, and you know, by the time people hear this at the end of the week, I'm already gonna be like halfway done it. I went today. I bought a new book. I'm really excited. I didn't know that Jeff Vandermeer put out a 4th what would you call it? Yeah, like a
Southern Reach.
No longer is it the Southern Reach trilogy.
It's
the Southern Reach quadrilogy. Is that what they would call it? But it's called Absolution. So this is part of the series that has Annihilation in it. He just put out a new book called Absolution. So I immediately went and purchased a copy. And that's what I'll be busy with, I'm sure, like the rest of this week. I did get to watch a couple things. One not so great, which was, you know, just because I like to torture myself, I decided to watch Borderlands. And this is the video game adaptation directed by Eli Roth, who obviously
I can't think of two worse things to smush together.
Oh no.
Well, and it's very interesting because, like, obviously Eli Roth, like, coming off a real heater right now with Thanksgiving, so, you know, I feel like he's kind of got the box office cred back. So, you know, they're like, here's Borderlands. And obviously, I mean, anyone that followed it, Borderlands came out in the theater, crashed and burned, like, just abysmal earnings. And I think I played Borderlands for maybe a day or two. It's not my game. I didn't really like it. So I guess, you know, I kind of thought to myself, maybe I just don't get it. I'm not a Borderlands guy. But then I go and read, like, all these Borderlands fans. Apparently, they're also not loving the film either. It's just, like, bizarre. I mean, you're always pretty apprehensive when, you know, the star of the movie is Kevin Hart, and we already know, like, you know, I don't think Kevin Hart checks a script that he accepts. He just kind of says, cool, like, the money is in my account, I will do your movie.
He checks the envelope that his check comes in, and that's probably about it.
But it's like, it's insane. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis is in this, Cate Blanchett who's in this.
Yeah,
like,
the cast is wild.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. But yeah, it was just very kind of blah, very generic storylines for, like, a video game adaptation. The FX work is, like, really bad in it. You know, I was kind of interested, I guess, to see what Eli Roth would do, because obviously, like, he's a horror movie guy with, like, some lower budget movies. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, they kind of gave him a bigger budget to make this movie. And yeah, he did not, I don't know if he didn't know what to do or just didn't put it to use. I didn't think it was great. I did get to watch some stuff, you know, before Halloween. So I did watch Don't Move, which is the new, like, horror thriller Netflix put out, produced by Sam Raimi. It was all right. Like, you know, it's quick. I think it's only like an hour and a half or something. And, you know, it's just like the basic premise of a serial killer and a girl in the woods. And I won't really give, like, the crux of what it's about, because it kind of, you know, I think going into it blind is kind of fun. Like, it definitely has an interesting catch to, you know, what makes the situation unique. And it's got, I can't think of his name. He's an American Horror Story. He plays a serial killer. I just know
Evan Peters?
No, it's the guy that played Dandy in the circus one.
Oh my God. It's on the Finn Whitrock?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Who, you know, just, I feel like anything I ever see him in, like auditioning for American Psycho, like a reboot, he's just like, come get me, because that's pretty much all he does. Is just
typecast.
Yeah, plays a Patrick Bateman type.
Like a yuppie.
Yeah.
He's so good at it, though. Fuck.
I know, he has one of those faces. You know how people say, like, people have punchable faces? He also does, but he has, like, a yuppie face.
And then on the 30th, so the day before Halloween, I had brought it up last episode. I was promoting it, but I went to Lower Sackville. Our friends at Terror Vision did a screening of the original Halloween. So we were there, and we, you know, we had a bunch of giveaways. We had, like, a mountain of movies and stickers and shirts. I don't even think we made it to the shirts and stickers. You know, people got their hands on movies. We gave some good stuff away, like Friday the 13th collections, Nightmare on Elm Street collections, and Halloween collections, and so lots of good stuff. Packed house, sold out. It was fantastic. My first time seeing Halloween on the big screen, and I mean, it's a classic for a reason. It's not like I'm gonna sit here and convince anyone they should. You should check out that Halloween movie by that John Carpenter fella. Yeah, only 4 more things I've seen. So I did finally finish. I watched The Killer, which I was texting Willow about briefly yesterday, which is John Woo's newest offering on Amazon. It's a remake of John Woo's movie from the 80s, I believe.
Yeah, the late 80s.
Yeah, which I've never seen the original, so this is...
Do yourself a favor and watch the original, because the original is one of the best action movies I've ever seen. It's just... I know that you like Face Off. It's in that same sort of mode.
Yeah,
like, you would totally love it.
I am a John Woo guy, like especially earlier John Woo, like some of his earlier American stuff, and everything I read, people are like, the original Killer is fantastic. This was okay. Some interesting set pieces. It's set in France, so it's always interesting when you have like an exotic locale and you're shooting it up and all that kind of stuff. But it just like most of the stuff that goes straight to streaming, like it just has like a distinct look. It's just like ugly. And I don't understand it. I guess I don't know if it's like me and Jill talk about this on streams all the time with like Tubi stuff. It's like, it's almost like there's like a filter. These companies are like, you need to put this over your movie so people know that it's like a garbage Amazon streaming movie or a garbage Tubi movie. And yeah, like it's just, it doesn't look great. It's pretty long. It's like 2.5 hours long or something, which like this just didn't need to be. Then I also got a chance. I checked out Joker Folie Deux, so the second Joker, and yeah, I don't know. I guess hot opinion. I just didn't really think it was that bad. I was like, yeah, I mean, pretty good. I thought maybe because I waited to see it for so long, I kind of knew all the criticisms going in. And as someone that's like definitely kind of on board with everyone, where I'm like, I'm just tired of like superhero stuff.
Yeah.
And even though the original Joker did try to do something different, I was like, it's kind of cool that they tried to then do something else different for the second one. I thought like some of the musical choices in it were pretty good. A lot of like Frank Sinatra, kind of, that kind of like New York vibe. Rat Pack vibe for music. Obviously, like, some iconic nods that even someone that hates musicals like me would know, nods to Singing in the Rain and stuff like this. But I thought it was interesting, like, especially where no one really like full out sings. It's almost like this like raspy whisper singing so that it never fully goes out into a full out musical. It's still kind of restrained. Yeah, I thought like even with the ending, I was like, Todd Phillips literally giving you what he promised he'd give you in the ending. So I don't know. I just didn't see like the big offense to it. It was fine. And the last two things I saw, I did get to finish the Martha documentary that came out on Netflix that I see everybody logging right now, which, I mean, fine also, I guess. Someone that I don't overly really care about.
How much Snoop content was there?
Not that much. Not enough, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just find that, she's generally odd and unpleasant anyway, so.
Have you ever seen a picture of her when she was young?
Yeah. Oh, they show
She
lots.
was a smokehouse, like... I would listen. I say, have you ever seen a picture of her? And you literally just said I watched a documentary. So obviously,
yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm playing the world's smallest violin. I guess for rich people getting caught doing illegal things. So whether or not they claim they did it or not, it's okay. She survived. She went to prison for 5 months, came out, and then was still rich. So
regardless. Martha Stewart puts out like the most bomb ass shit at TJ Maxx, like wrapping paper, like Christmas wrapping paper. If you want something cute, Martha Stewart, honey. So it's okay.
The last thing I watched was kind of, I was going to say in preparation, but it was actually post-production, let's call it, where, you know, I just got that hankering after I watched the movie we're going to talk about here soon. I was like, I gotta watch Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I just gotta watch it. It just bangs. I mean, we did an episode on it. We love it. I've said that's probably my favorite one out of the whole series. So I just absolutely love it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've been up to. What about you, Willow?
For me, it's that time of year when film critics are watching movies basically all day long to try and catch up on all of the films that came out in the calendar year. So it's kind of exhausting if I went through every single thing I was watching. So I'm going to keep this just to Halloween, which was an off day for me, and I still watched like 4 movies. So I did kind of like a horror marathon on Halloween that was really fun. I started it with Dario Argento's Phenomena on Shudder, which is one of the most batshit movies that you can watch from that director. There's a chimpanzee, there's Donald Pleasance, there's Jennifer Connelly, there's a heavy metal soundtrack to reference the movie that we're going to watch, the movie that we're going to talk about here in a second. It's a wonderful film. Try not to pay too much close attention to the plot. It's more about the sequences themselves. That's always Argento's forte. It's a wonderful film. I love that one a lot. After that, my husband and I rewatched Bride of Frankenstein, and we always rewatch one of the Universal Monster movies on Halloween. Those movies are just really cozy and fun for us. They're like 70 minutes long. They're just like embedded in our DNA, basically. And Bride of Frankenstein is one of the most fun of that entire series because it's not actually really a horror film too much. It's more kind of like a horror comedy. And it delves into some of the things that Mary Shelley's book got into that the first Frankenstein film in the Universal Monster series didn't. Like Boris Karloff starts to talk in this one. He has a relationship with an older blonde man who can't see him, and it humanizes the character, and it's a great movie. It's a classic. If Trevor gets a patrons pick again in the near future, I think he's gonna pick Bride of Frankenstein for y'all to like just to go off of that Frankenstein episode that y'all did. After that, we rewatched Rob Zombie's Monsters movie, which is another one that's kind of a traditional one for us. I know that that's not the most well-liked film, and I know that Rob Zombie is a controversial filmmaker, but god damn it, we love Rob Zombie in this house. It's this wonderful, sappy kind of romantic comedy that's also kind of a horror film, and it has all of that explosive Mario Bava lighting that Beetlejuice was referencing, but like way more extravagant and tacky and gorgeous, and I love that movie a lot. After that, we rewatched John Carpenter's Halloween, little known film, as Rowan was talking about. I think this John Carpenter guy might be going places. Everyone knows everything about Halloween at this point. Everyone watches Halloween on Halloween. It's just one of those movies. And another traditional one we rewatched, it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown's In the Night, which I think that, everyone needs to watch that movie on Halloween. It's traditional for us in the same way that like the Treehouse of Horror Simpson stuff is leading up to Halloween throughout the month. So that was my day on Halloween and the movies that I watched and the little horror marathon that we did. And other than that, the other thing I've been consuming, I've been reading Izumu Suzuki's Terminal Boredom, her short stories, and they're fantastic. They're erotic, they're depressing, they're horrific, and they're really prescient about like modern times and like what we're going through now with our addiction to screens and things of that sort. She's a really interesting writer that I would totally recommend. And I also just want to give a shout out to Lady Gaga's music video for Disease, which I've also watched like 500 times since it came out.
Yes.
I'm totally obsessed with it. It's my favorite music video she's made in a really long time, and I'm so excited for her new album, and just I'm totally obsessed.
It's so dark and cinematic, like.
Oh yeah, it's
Gaga.
Kind of it's
Gaga, exactly.
It's Gaga. So Jill, what have you been consuming lately?
Okay, I'll start off with books. So I read a book called Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. And it's a book set in like the maybe 1800s, 1900s in New Orleans. And this girl is from a family of like necromancers. Anyway, she enters this haunted manor to find her sister. And it's kind of like a trial, kind of like Hunger Games or something. But each trial is based on a circle of hell. And there's a really hot phantom and ghost sex. It's like one of the best books that I've read this year. It was like 400 and something pages. I like gobbled that down like a greedy little troll. Apart from that, I read a book called Gloom, which is an anthology of short stories from Ricky Olson, who is guitarist in the band Motionless in White. His stories kind of reminded me of like a lot of gay horror writers like Paul Tremblay. Like it's really disgusting, weird, but also like real stuff that would happen in real life that's terrifying. And I had really messed up dreams after reading that book, but it was really good. And to just riff off of that, I went to see Motionless in White on Halloween night for the second year in a row, and that was awesome. I dressed up as Frankenhooker. Everyone was dressed up. It was just a really fun time. They always put on the best Halloween show. And then I went to an after party at this goth bar that's owned by like an ex-member of Motionless in White. Had a really good time in Scranton, PA. And also last weekend I went to a haunted hayride for the first time, and that was just so much fun, and I want to do it all the time. For movies, I watched Dr. Sleep for Straight Jacket Talk.
Nice.
Yeah, we just did The Shining not too long ago, so it was cool to watch this after watching The Shining like kind of recently. Yeah, I wish it were better. I liked the Mike Flanagan-ness of it, but I also just really love The Shining, and it's really hard to kind of detach from that mentality and watch this. And I feel like this should have been a series instead of a 2.5-hour movie. But it was decent. I watched Crimson Peak yesterday for the first time. I thought it would like really be up my alley, and it was like visually, but the story was like pretty weak, I guess. I don't know. It's just like not what I expected, and I didn't really care for the protagonist or anything.
I feel like that's
really
his most decisive movie. I hear a lot of people that don't overly love that one.
Right, yeah. It looks so
but,
good.
Jessica Chastain is so fucking good in it. She's just serving.
I'm not going to lie, I own it. But I don't know if I ever finished it. I know I started watching it and I might have like stopped halfway through and never finished it.
That's also my experience with this. Is my second time trying to watch it, and I did like doze off a little bit during it. I love Jessica Chastain. She's like a villain in this, and she's more interesting than the protagonist. Like that's my issue, is that the protagonist, I forget the actress's name. She plays like the Tim Burton's Alice. Just like really bland. I don't know. I just don't like her.
Oh, yeah, Mia.
Wasikowska.
Yes,
I'm sorry if that's like blasphemous, but I don't know. She doesn't do it for me. I watched Misery for the first time the other day. So good. I really liked that. I love Kathy Bates.
Ugh.
And she was just incredible. The whole thing, I was just kind of like, this is Stephen King.
She deserved all the praise she got for that movie.
She's so good.
I also, like Rowan, rewatched Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2 to kind of, get ready for 3, because I had never seen 2 before. And I really liked 2 as well. I thought it was really fun. And also, of course, I love the first one. I kind of like them equally, I would say. I think they're just both really good.
They're just very, very different styles of film.
Yeah.
Like Nightmare on Elm Street almost feels like it's left over from the late 70s.
Yes.
But then when you jump forward to Nightmare 2, it's very like 80s, you know, like kind of neon, daytime.
Yeah.
MTV, yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I also watched Shadow of the Vampire.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen that in like
a long time.
Oh, man. I haven't seen that since I lived in Halifax. And that's got to be like 15 plus years ago.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I love, well, the whole premise behind it, if you don't know, it's about the director of the 1922 Nosferatu who makes like a deal with a vampire to play Nosferatu in the movie. And the monster effects, just, he looks so fucking good. I was just like, wow, like really impressed at every shot. And also the way that the storytelling was kind of laid out, like when they're filming stuff, like with the camera that you have to wind up, and the director is like telling the actors how to act like he's telling a story, and it's like silent film. So it's just a really cool way to like tell that story and show that that's how movies were probably made, like all the way back then. And I thought that was really cool.
My favorite part's at the end, like the ending where you find out everybody is just John Malkovich. That's my favorite part.
I think that's a different movie.
There's an urban legend about the director of Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau, that someone actually grave robbed his corpse after he died and stole his skull. And
Jesus.
And that's been like an ongoing like talking point with him for a long time. Like he's one of the greatest directors of all time, but also like there's this other thing where like, yeah, somebody has his skull somewhere, maybe.
I thought you were going to say the rumor was that they were John Malkovich. So.
Oh my gosh.
And John Malkovich is actually a vampire.
I would believe that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen John Malkovich out in daylight? I don't think I have.
And it's a little uncanny how much he does look like Nosferatu. But anyway, 2 more things I watched. Immaculate, I finally watched.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yes.
I really liked that. It kind of reminded me of Suspiria meets like The Nun.
Yeah, there's like heavy Argento like vibes going on there. Like definitely some nods.
I love that vibe. Love Sydney Sweeney, obviously.
She was really good in it.
She's fucking amazing, and I did not expect it to be that gnarly.
That ending.
It got real gnarly.
Like, oof.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it when I saw it because we did it for Now Slain at the beginning of the year or whatever, and there was only like a couple people in the theater, but like one of the couples were on a first date in the theater, and I just remember like when that ending unwinds, and I just remember the guys like, what the fuck?
I was gonna say that's your test when you go to that movie.
Yeah.
How does the dude react? And then that's like, do you want a second date with him or not?
That's a good test.
Fuck.
The last thing I watched was The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, which is like a contemporary take on the Frankenstein story, but with a girl from, a Black community. And it looks at all of the things that encompass that. And then also making your own monster from, someone you lost and you want to bring them back. And then dealing with that when they start killing cops and shit, which is pretty cool. But I thought it looked really good. I really wish the storytelling was a bit better because I feel like it's a great idea and it really worked for the concept, but it just, I don't know, it was kind of long and dragged on a little bit. So I feel like if they tightened it up a bit, I don't know, it is a fun take. I am a sucker for Frankenstein stuff. And
I was going to say, that's like your 8th Frankenstein adjacent thing that you watched in the last couple weeks.
Everything.
Including your Halloween costume, by the way. Just FYI.
Oh, yeah. I just fucking love.
I've got that on my list to watch. I should watch that this week. Because, that's a Shudder exclusive. And I've been excited to check it out.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I was like, this is something Rowan would like. It's really good. Really fucking scary also, I feel like.
Well, I'm excited to watch it.
But that's all I had. So let's get into the Dream Warriors.
Yeah, and I guess this was my pick. So, yeah. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. I feel like why I chose this. Well, I kind of thought about how it's been a little while since we've hit one of our franchises. You know, you always make that conscious effort, I feel, when you're like not just a movie podcast, but a horror movie podcast. Because, you know, it's like every movie podcast in the world has, you know, does all the Halloweens, does all the Friday the 13th. And we were kind of slow on the ball. I don't think we really got it, you know. We kind of did one, I think, you know, every year at the beginning, and then we kind of stopped doing them at all. So it's been a long time. I mean, when we did A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, it was only me, Mike, and Exilia on the podcast. I was definitely still getting used to editing episodes, and I'm sure it sounded terrible.
I was probably on my PlayStation headset.
We should have brought it back for the episode, the throwback.
Yeah. I still have that somewhere.
But I mean, then, you know, the other flip of the coin is, as a horror movie podcast, you're always like, well, at some point I want to, you know, get through these franchises, and, you know, most of them get zany and weird, and like, I want to talk about them. And this one, I mean, I can say for sure, I was going back, looking at the notes, you know, this was on Mike's list from day one when we were coming up with ideas for this. Was, you know, this wasn't even the first one or the second one. It was this one. So it's definitely, you know, it's been sitting there, it's been waiting. So I said, you know what, I'm going to be the guy that, you know, everyone can groan or be happy about, that's going to say, let's get back into a franchise and talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. So let's get into the trailer, and we'll be back with the synopsis and first experiences.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
1.
He's close.
2.
He's real, isn't he? You're right, Ghost. He's real.
3. Ready or not, Freddy's back. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 3. Dream Warriors, rated R.
Starts Friday at a theater near you.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors was released in 1987 and was directed by Chuck Russell and written by Frank Darabont, Chuck Russell, Wes Craven, and Bruce Wagner. And the synopsis is as follows. During a hallucinatory incident, Kristen Parker has her wrist slashed by dream stalking monster. That is terrible English, guys.
Ro didn't read this before he started to read it.
I guess the comma. So you know what? I'm not even going to edit it. I'm just going to keep it flowing. So dream stalking monster Freddy Krueger. Her mother, mistaking the wounds for a suicide attempt, sends her to a psychiatric ward where she joins a group of similarly troubled teens. So first experiences, is this our first time seeing it, or do we have a poster hanging above like our bed or on our wall somewhere? So, you know, when we're getting those late night booty calls, we can just look at the poster and always feel great. Mike, you know, just off that topic, Mike.
For no reason.
Let's start with you.
No reason at all, yeah. Talk about getting called the fuck out.
Where's the poster?
Yes, the poster is actually up in my living room over my couch.
I think it used to be in your bedroom.
No, yes. It's when we actually first started the podcast, I lived in another apartment, and so I have giant framed posters of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4. And it used to be that 4 was up in my living room, along with some other prints, and then 3 I had over my bed. But when I moved here, I swapped them out, so Now 4 is over my bed and 3 is over my couch in my living room. And I don't regret it. I think that it feels right.
I like it.
You know, it feels right. Yeah. So, oh my God, where do I start? I will start by saying I have probably seen this movie more times than maybe any other movie in my entire life. It was one of the first horror movies I ever watched. I watched it when I was like 7 years old. I used to go to the video store when I was a kid, obviously. And, this was back when video stores were all over the place. And one of our local video stores, I believe I think they kept it up years after, because I definitely didn't see it when it was like just out because I would have been too young. But they had this big cardboard cutout of the cover of this movie, and it was like 3D, you know what I mean? Like it was this big, huge thing, and like Freddy's claws were like their own pieces of cardboard, and I just remember like being a kid and looking at that and being like gobsmacked. I'm like, this is so scary, but it looks so cool. Like, what is this? I need to know what this is. And I literally, when I was like 8 years old, forced my mom to rent it for me, and I don't know how she clearly just didn't give a fuck or like didn't actually look at it. And I rented it, and picture me at like 8 years old sitting in the living room on the family TV with the VCR. And okay, like some of it's fine. Some of it's really gory. There's just big old nurse tits in it. Like, you know what I mean? They're like committing suicide or appearing to, like, literally. Anyway, so once I rented it once, I was hooked, and then mom saw it and was like, oh my God, what have I let you watch? And I kept saying to her, like, I've already seen it, so you might as well let me rent it again. And I would literally rent it like once a month. I showed all of my friends. My best friend who lived up the street growing up, she was obsessed with it too. But I was one of those kids that like kind of went, this is a movie, I know this isn't real. And she'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe, like blah, blah, blah is dead. And I'm like, girl, they're actors. It's not real. And they're like at 9 years old, like teaching my besties how movies worked and that they weren't real. Anyway, so I've just seen it like a million times since then. It's a comfort movie. It has informed every aspect of like every aesthetic in my life. The clothing, the music, like the way the characters move. I'm obsessed with it. The dialogue, like it invaded my body, and like I like ate it, and it became part of my DNA. And it's like one of those movies that like I always show it to people. I put it on when I'm feeling stressed. I'll sometimes, if I just want to see a certain sequence, we'll just like get on YouTube if I'm on my computer and like just watch 5 minutes of it. I've literally seen it a million times. I've owned it multiple times on VHS, multiple times on DVD, multiple times on Blu-ray. I'm waiting for the fucking 4K to come out because this is going to be incredible in 4K. That's all I'm saying. Jill, what's your history?
Yeah, so I'm on the very opposite of the spectrum here because this is my first time seeing it. I've seen the first Nightmare, and that's the only one I've ever seen over and over again. So I guess I was just like scared to get into the franchise because, like Rowan was saying earlier, it's usually not good. And I feel like the more and more I watch these, the more that so far that is not true for this series. Everyone I see is just spectacular, and I feel like this one, not to spoil my rating or anything, but I think this is my favorite one so far. It's just a lot of fun. The gore is unreal. When I saw, first of all, like the weird claymation shit going on, I was like, oh, this is different. And also the first time you see Freddy when he's like that big snake thing from under the rug, I was like, this is insane. This is the best she's ever looked. They're doing so much cool, like edgy stuff. And Freddy is just like dirtier, and I don't know. It like really works for me. And the music, we had a little dance party before we start recording because we were watching the music video to Dream Warriors. And dude, I'm just gagged. Like I didn't expect to like it. You guys kept telling me I was gonna like it, but I'm in love with it. But Willow, I'm sure you've seen it before.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you're like going on this Nightmare on Elm Street journey, because I do think at least up through the first 4, like, you're in good hands. Like, I think that the first 4 are of about the same quality, and I really like all of those. But yeah, I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors many times. I think I first saw it when I was an adolescent. When I started getting heavily into horror movies, it was the aughts, and, the horror movies that you would be pointed in the direction of would be the slasher films. Those were kind of the new classics at the time. So you have this rite of passage in the aughts of like going through like the Halloween movies, the Friday the 13th movies, Nightmare on Elm Street. And I immediately really liked A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I went to my video store and rented the first one. And then after I saw the first one, within the span of a month, I had seen like all of these movies, because I was quite obsessed with the whole world of these films and what they were getting at, and the character of Freddy Krueger, and even the teenagers in these movies, I think, are like a cut above what you typically get in slasher movies. Like, we'll get into it here with Dream Warriors, but all of these teenagers in this film have huge personalities, and but yeah, I've seen Dream Warriors many times, and I'm excited to get into it here on this podcast. I know for a fact that Mike is a huge fan of it, because we got really drunk and watched it over wine like this year. Like,
I was gonna say, it was only a few months ago.
It was only a few months ago. So if we can recapture some of that energy, we'll be doing great here. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Mike. I mean, I remember going in and seeing this like in the rental stores. I remember that cutout, like one of my local rental stores having it. It's fantastic. I always find it hard because, when discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street, I feel like it always, it's kind of, when you're a kid, it's like, oh, I really like Freddy. Oh, I really like Jason. Like, I Michael Myers. Like, it's kind of, what is your franchise? I've talked about it many times. Like, I tend to gravitate towards Friday the 13th a little more. Just as a kid, I saw it more. But, I did, just like Willow's talking about. I'm a little older than Willow, but, it's the same old story. It doesn't matter the year. Like, you get to that point in time. I was probably a little younger. I feel like I probably would have seen mostly everything that would have been out by the time I was like, probably like 8 or 9.
It's because your mom is so awesome and like points you in the direction of horror movies when you were a kid.
Yeah, and like I said, so, seeing this, and I mean, it might have even been younger, because I have a very vivid memory, which I'm not going to get into because when we do get there, but I have a very vivid memory at a very young age seeing Freddy's dead at a birthday party. So that wasn't mine. It was like another kid's. It's a good story. I'll tell it when we eventually get there.
Was it Mike's birthday party?
It wasn't. It was,
I wish.
Yeah, I won't ruin the story because I've been holding on to that story, waiting. I just knew when I was a kid. Someday, you're going to be able to talk on a microphone and people are going to listen. And I'll keep that story. But yeah, I mean, I've seen this a bunch of times, and I have a weird relationship with A Nightmare on Elm Street because I'm a huge fan of the original. I'm a huge fan of the second one, and I find it even past 4. There's always something you can kind of find the like about these movies. They're very likable. They're very easily digestible. They're very fun, especially as we keep going on in the series. But it's also, I find, like, when I watch them, it's one of those ones that I never watch one, and then I'm like, oh, okay. I watch my Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just, for some reason, one of those things where I watch one, I'm like, oh, now I gotta watch, like, this one, and, like, let me just, and then by the time I'm done, I've blacked out and I've watched all of them in a row, and that happens every time I watch these. So yeah, long story short, I've seen this a bunch of times. So yeah, I would say we can officially call this group in the session, my fellow Dream Warriors, and let's discuss some Freddy Krueger, if I had my way, I'd just talk about Kincaid, which is, probably one of my favorite characters of the whole series. Just love
you actually somewhat resemble him.
Oh, God.
No, I mean, there's a quality about him that is just so lovable and no nonsense that is very Rowan.
Just not as tough. Nowhere near as tough.
Well, you're not picking up chairs and bending the legs on them, so...
I should do that. Just bust out and do it.
But you also got to start saying fucking A all the time.
Yeah. Fucking A. I can't add more to my my trademark sayings. I already have every listener writing in, and everyone's like, Rowan's gonna say banger on this one.
Wow, they're just clocking you.
I know, clocking me like crazy. So I don't know. My kind of thought was maybe have I had a big. I don't want to say question. It's more of a comment, but I guess to really open this up. But to me, when I think about Dream Warriors, I had in my notes, the first thing I wrote was, this is the beginning of the end for Nightmare on Elm Street. And when I say that, I mean, this is kind of, this is the page bend of, the earmark of, this is where Freddy starts to get, his personality. We're kind of coming out of... I don't want to say this one necessarily, but we're going to proceed with Freddy becoming funnier and funnier. The series relying more on gags, the kills being a little more inventive, the one-liners, things like that. It's not fully formed here, but it is starting. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that, because I could see, I think it's pretty well known. If you look this up, this is probably one of the most loved of the series. I would say probably even over the first one. But I think it's interesting that, kind of the purists, I guess, that, the Wes Cravenites, I'll call them, that really enjoy, his vision of Freddy isn't funny. Freddy is scary. He's not a joke. This is kind of, where it goes off the rails for those people. And then, I'm just curious how you think, that worked out and kind of the legacy of this once you have that foresight of where this series is going to go.
I get what you're saying, but when I think of Wes Craven, I also think that's part of his wheelhouse is doing iconic teenagers, doing stuff that's funny but also smart, and just making things really iconic. And so if you didn't tell me, I would have thought this was probably Wes Craven. I don't know.
Wes Craven movies are, and I think that with a couple of exceptions, and I think maybe because a lot of people are oh, Last House on the Left and shit, but even in the 80s and especially in the 90s, his shit is also very funny. He's a funny guy. He loves comedy. Yeah. As much as he loves horror. So it's people getting their feathers ruffled over that always sort of boggles my mind, because, the humor is dark, but I find if you look at his movies, it's always there. The universe is a sick joke.
I think
maybe that's just me.
I think that you're correct, Rowan, in the sense that it is sort of the end of one version of Freddy Krueger, but it is the beginning of another one. It's important to know that they had nowhere to go after the second film, because the second film was it was destroyed at the time by critics, partially due to homophobia, but also it was just such an upsetting movie for a lot of people that they kind of wanted to go in a new direction with the third one. And by opening the character up to Robert Englund's own very charismatic personality, they were able to prolong the series. And there are some good ones after this one. But I also think it's important to know that there's some funny moments in the first two ones as well. It's creepy when Freddy Krueger tells Nancy through the telephone, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. But it's funny when his tongue juts out, through practical effect. So there is a sense of humor in those first two films, and I think that this one is just kind of tapping into that element in a bigger way, in a way that I don't think betrays what these films felt like previously either. And I think that the balance is what makes this film kind of special in a way.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with that. And to me, you know, I always kind of felt with this one, it just feels like this is really where, you know, we're putting Freddy first. Like, this is where, like, and, you know, like you said, Jill, you know, it's watching this, and it's like, oh, you know, Wes Craven's great at, like, you know, creating these teens and teens with personality and this stuff. But to me, it's like, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street, it could be something else other than Freddy and your nightmares. Like, to me, that movie doesn't exist and center around Freddy necessarily. It's more so the cast and the relationships and the story going on, where like to me this is like Freddy is the center of this, and it's like, yeah, he is the leading character of this.
I mean, he's why all the characters have come together.
Yes,
because they've all been affected by him, whereas before it's one person is affected and then you just get the people that are in their orbit anyway. Whereas this is, he's literally like the center of gravity for the whole, you know, group of kids.
And bringing Nancy back too, I think, is another thing that really drew me into this, because I love like Nancy's story, like her saga. I love her character. So her coming back and being kind of like a mentor to these kids, I thought was really interesting, and having that stuff like, you know, with her relationship with her dad and everything. And also, I forget the name of the girl, Patricia Arquette.
Kristen.
She played Kristen. I loved her character from like the get-go. I thought she was just like, and like having those two girls and like their camaraderie that they had. I don't know. It just made it like very much more palatable to me than like the teens in the first two for some reason. I just really liked the cast of this one.
I think it also like helps that like it's less about like girlfriends with their boyfriends. I think it's stronger that this is just like a friend group. Like I also really like the relationship between Heather Langenkamp and Patricia Arquette's character. Like they have this internal sense of understanding each other on like this deep level that I really like.
I mean, obviously pretty smart bringing Heather Langenkamp back, although I feel kind of bad for her. I will say I thought it was funny. I was watching, I've got like, you know, they only have like the generic box set out on Blu-ray for this, which is really sad. And which the special features absolutely terrible on these.
It's nothing. It's like 5 minutes of footage.
You click on a thing, you're like, okay, I'm gonna watch about, you know, Heather Langenkamp returning, and then it's like 25 seconds of her talking, and that's it. But I was just thinking how, you know, it's kind of sad that she came back, and of course when she came back, it was fully expected that Wes was going to direct this, and, you know, he was going to be the final writer on this, and, you know, thank God she did stay for it, but obviously Wes didn't direct this, didn't have the final script right on this. Chuck Russell ended up doing it with his writing partner, and, you know, which they did, you know, I feel like, you know, they should be given a lot of credit. I know, you know, they're the one that brought us Penis Freddy. Which
Penis Freddy,
one of the like maybe one of the most like iconic forms of Freddy, I believe.
I mean, his backstory is that he is a pedophile, so like they're playing into that whole imagery in a really direct way. It sure is something.
That's one thing I really like about this one especially, is they're really bringing in that like folklore, that story about, you know, him being burned alive by all of these pissed off parents for him being a child like rapist, a pedophile.
I mean, they always say child killer, but
yeah.
It's understood that, you know, it was not just murder.
Yeah, and they add on to the lineage of Freddy too by suggesting that his mother was like raped by 100 mentally unstable people when she was a nun. Like, it's really wild, like folklore attached to this character.
Yeah,
it's nuts. But I like that it gives you like a reason to really like kind of hate him, you know, but also you love him because he's just so funny and he does just the craziest shit.
The bastard of a Is it like the
bastard son of 100 maniacs?
Yeah.
Like, what a fucking mouthful. What a turn of phrase that is.
Did you guys fully like the, because this is the first one that really introduces like that beginning lore, but we get Amanda Kruger like as a older nun, and we get like almost like this little ghost story in the middle of it, where Neil is, seeing her places, talking to her. I feel like his colleagues should probably be questioning him more why he's just, having conversations with trees at funerals and stuff, but we let it slide, I guess. I'm not sure. But yeah, like, did that fully work with you? Obviously, I feel like we explore more of this in number 5. Or number 4.
Yes.
Yeah, 5 is where
number 5, yeah.
5 is where we go really deep into it. But like I did enjoy the inclusion of this in it. Just because it does beef it up a little bit, like gives it a little more story. There's more stuff you can do. Because I felt there were certain spots in this where I was like, ooh, like they pulled it off, but it was like I felt they were like dangerously kind of lulling around, but then they were kind of able to fit in the Amanda Kruger stuff that kind of keeps it going, keeps that steady story going, where I feel like without that there would have been some lulls in this, just just for not having necessarily enough story to tell.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of essential now, like looking back on it. If it didn't have that, I would feel like something's missing.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes when they attempt to in a sequel like retroactively kind of give an origin story or like inject more lore for the purpose of like a plot device or to move the story forward, that it can sometimes be like really clunky and forced or even boring. But I don't know. There's just something about this, and maybe it's because I fucking love nuns in movies, especially horror movies. This really did it for me. I thought it was like not too much. Like they really did kind of like, they didn't go into too much detail, but it was just enough. And there was something about that like creepy closed wing of the hospital and like the nun volunteering and, just that like fucking cream like habit she was wearing. And, the fact that it turned out to be his mother and like the sexual assault and stuff. And everything about it was like, to me, worked. And it was horrifying. It gave a good turn of phrase that, they'd repeat through the rest of the sequels. And I don't know, just like nuns any day.
I like it because it's an unconventional backstory. It's not just like some like backstory where it follows the beats of how a person becomes a serial killer. They take it to genuinely strange places, and because that it's this extravagant, gothic, really bizarre sort of nightmare scenario in and of itself. Like when they say like, he's the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs or whatever, like, that's a really evocative image, and it's an image that they tap into in the 4th film at the beginning, I believe.
Yeah.
And they totally nail it as an image in a way that's really satisfying as well. And I think that the added backstory of Freddy Krueger here actually helps the film instead of detracts from it. It's just one of those things where like it's really deftly written in a way that I think that just it totally adds to the film.
And it's so funny actually, because you, I think, hit the nail on the head when you evoked the gothic. Yeah. It is so fucking gothic, down to her wafting around like a ghost around the halls of this dusty, closed, like abandoned part of the hospital, and instead of like in a white gauzy dress while there's, this a candelabra, she's wearing like a white long, habit that flows around her, and she's very pale. It's so gothic. It's so fucking gothic. And the like tragic, tragedy of the backstory. And yes, just I could fucking eat it up. I just love anything gothic.
And I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. Jill brought up the return of Heather Langenkamp, all excited. Where's the love for my boy, John Sexton? The return of John Sexton, just icon.
Yeah, he's here for a couple scenes, special appearance by. But you know who? You know who's an even better guest star than John Saxon is Lawrence Fishburne. He's playing one of the nurses in this movie, and
don't you mean Larry Fishburne?
Yeah, Larry Fishburne, and he's in this movie just a little bit, but he injects so much personality into his character, and I wish that he were in the film more. That's really my only complaint with this movie is I wish it had more Larry Fishburne.
But, like, it's just so funny because even the, like, night staff of the hospital who have Max... Well, I mean, he has a few scenes, right? But, like there's the dispensary guy and everything. Like, oh my God, they're just so... Like, they're all just, like, dripping with, like, personality. And, like, you just don't forget them. Maybe because I've seen it a million times. But I just remember the first time I watched it. And, like... I mean, obviously, I loved Max. Like, he's just... I love when he's like, all their parents did drugs in the 60s. And they're all fucked up now. And I'm like, you know what? It's funny that in the 2020s, that would still be, like, a valid theory. But, like, even the guy who's, like, you know, trying to get Taryn to, like, you know, do drugs with him and stuff, it's like, oh, he's so fucking sleazy. And it's, like, so, ooh, like, it makes my skin crawl. But, like, it's just, he's so, like, he just drips with, like, grime and grease. And it's like, oh, I just, like, every little character in this movie is, like, endearing or awful, but, like, memorable. You know, like what few lines they have, the actors just like really hit home.
Yeah, well, and I mean, this is where this one hits, you know, I guess, you know, tickles my fancy a little bit because obviously I've talked about, I mean, this is like, you know, this is another setting that's like very similar to like a place I work in, you know, not as restricted as this. And obviously, like, you know, I'm not dealing with like, you know, teenagers that are fully capable people, but, you know, very much so, you know, like the Maxes, stuff like that. Like that's stuff I do at my job. And I think it was interesting because it's very true to life. Like, you know, most people are very Maxes in our line of work where like they build these relationships with the people that live there that, you know, the people that live in facilities like that or are staying in facilities like that. A lot of times like family isn't visiting them or stuff like that. Like, so you do become the family, but it's very interesting because also, you know, you get the sleaze bag guys too, and you get the people that are there for a paycheck and that's it. And so, you know, this one I will say, you know, with my line of work, like hits a little close to home. And yeah, I mean, you know, even this young Lawrence Fishburne just killing it. I mean, it was only what, 4 years after this. And I just think about how young he looks in this. And I'm like, 4 years after this, he's going to play Furious and Boys in the Hood. You know, he's going to be like a teenager's dad. And just, you know, I feel like Lawrence Fishburne is like super underrated.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything he's in, he makes better. He's one of those guys I'm always happy to see in a movie.
John Wick, amazing. Yeah, like The Matrix, amazing. I feel like most people just kind of, you know, he kind of got forgotten in time. Like he took that job on, like he was in one of the CSIs or whatever, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's, you know, that actor that's on CSI now. And yeah, people forget, like this guy just throwing heaters when he was younger, just in iconic
he's
movies.
An incredible actor. Like when I was a kid, partially because of this, but then I saw all of those other movies that you mentioned, you know, especially because I had an older brother and he would like rent them all the time or buy them. And I was like, man, this dude is amazing. Like, be my father.
I just want to say, like, on the flip side of that coin, like the setting of this movie being, you know, like a psych ward. And also, like, when I was growing up and I was a teenager, I struggled with mental health and, like, you know, suicide and stuff like that. So seeing the setting of teenagers, you know, they're really going through the nightmares of Freddy Krueger, but it also touches on the fact that, you know, this is the time of people's lives where you start to face mental illness for the first time. Mm-hmm. And the way that you're treated is very similar. Yeah. Like people don't take you seriously, or some of the dialogue about mental health in this is, you know, it just would not fly today because it's just they're saying like people are cowards for like, you know, committing suicide and stuff like that. And I was like, holy shit. But like, you know, it's very much a product of its time, and we still do have those stigmas about it. And I don't know, a part of what makes this so great is that setting, and they just do so much with it.
Yeah, and you feel palpable anger at the staff too for not listening to these kids, and it's really earned in this film. And I also had some mental health stuff when I was a teenager, and the film works for me in that way as well. You know, we got into this a little bit, the two of us, when we were talking about Ginger Snaps too, on the Phantom episode where my audio cut out. But, you know, this movie reminds me a little bit of Ginger Snaps too in some ways as well. Like you mentioned, the orderly, like trying to exploit Taryn because she uses drugs and everything. And like that almost mirrors the scene exactly that happens in Ginger Snaps too.
Yeah.
I think that both of these movies are really, they're really empathetic towards mental health, because I do think that this film is always on the side of the teenagers. You know, we're supposed to be siding with them. We're supposed to root for them. And I love that about this movie.
Yeah, I love the line of dialogue when they're in the first group session. And okay, just side note for a second, I'm not going to spend an hour talking about everybody's fucking outfits, even though I want to. But that, like, from that moment on, it's like, damn, the wardrobe department went so fucking hard in this movie. Everybody, even when they're just in a sweatshirt, is fucking impeccable. But in that first group scene, one of the like lines of dialogue that has always stuck out to me and really sort of like is emblematic of not just like when you're a teenager, but like, you know, in a setting like a hospital where they mean well, but they don't understand and they refuse to listen to you. But also, you know, when you're like being hunted by a dream demon. But he says, you know, we go around in circles making minimum progress with maximum effort. And I love that line because to me, it's just the diagnosis of everything that fucking sucks about their position and like being a teenager in real life and in this movie. You know, like you're just like screaming at the top of your lungs, like this is wrong. And it's like your wheels are spinning and you're going nowhere, you know. I've always just loved that first group sequence because of that, because it really does right off the bat show you that, like, you know, maybe the adults do mean well, but like they don't show it. You know what I mean? Like they say they want what's best for the kids, but like the actions are showing that they're just going to do whatever is easiest for them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, I think that the big issue with helping the kids is that Neil's putting in the maximum effort, but he's putting in maximum effort into getting Nancy home with him. That's what he's busy doing.
And girl, what is she? Like 23, max 24, because she says it's 6 years later and she was 17 or 18.
They call the like hot
grad school superstar.
Grad. Yeah. This has to be one of the funniest relationships in a movie, because I'm like, there's no setup to like, you know, they have the scene where they're just like casually having like a day. It's not even like a dinner. It's like at a diner when they're done working, talking about the kids. And then like, it's the next time I see these guys together, they're like at like, you know, one of their places, the fire's lit. They're basically just like, we're like, all right.
Sitting on the floor in front of the fire.
Like hugging each other. Like, oh, you know, I don't want anything to happen to you. And it's just like, I was like, what is going on right now? Like, we're just jumping right into it. We're like, these guys, you know, Nancy came. Nancy was like, I like the schlong that Neil's slanging. So it's going down. Also, yeah, Neil definitely older, definitely prying on.
Yes, like it's literally. But also it's funny because when I was talking about what I watched at the beginning of the episode, I actually forgot to draw the parallel. I watched that like Tuesday, so not even a week ago. The main character in Body Double by Brian De Palma is Craig Wasson, who plays Neil in this. So I watched 2 movies this week starring this man. He probably has 5 lead roles to his name. And I watched 2 of them this week.
Dang.
It's so weird. It's so weird. He's an interesting actor, let me tell you. But yeah. He's definitely it's a little bit of a problematic relationship. Not only the age gap, I don't, you know, like that's a lot of that's bullshit, but it's like, is he kind of her boss? Like, I feel like there's a power dynamic there that I'm just not comfortable with. Like
100%. I mean, he would kind of be overseeing it, you would think.
Yeah,
it's weird.
And I feel like I've always not really, like, I could tell that there was like a little bit of a tiny bit of a romantic spark there, and I understand that, yes, they were like, you know, hanging out at Nancy's with the fire going and stuff like that, but like I always felt it was a little bit more platonic, but also I feel like any of the spark that was there was only reciprocated because I feel like Nancy maybe is like not pushing him away because she knows that if she lets him get close to her, that she can maybe like convince him to like prescribe them Hypnosil and stuff, and like you know, kind of like
she needs his help,
curry favor. Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. That's always been my theory on it.
I agree with that. I could see that kind of being the case, because I mean, pretty much until she, you know, she's kind of reciprocating, he's not very interested in her opinions on what is going on. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, like,
oh, you want to prescribe this antipsychotic? Sounds good. We're on it.
I thought, you know, this would kind of kill two birds with one stone. You know, we're talking about, you know, we brought up like the great characters of the kids here. And also, you know, we said kind of intro in this movie, this is like the beginning where we get like really inventive with the kills, with like Freddy's kills. This isn't just like him slashing you with the glove and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about, you know, the kids, maybe how we felt about the kills. I'm going to avoid the topic this episode to go on about what the hell's going on with Joey and his like LA gang tear tattoo. You know, that you get done.
What is that?
That you get done when you've murdered somebody. I'm pretty sure that's what that's supposed to be.
They like zoom in on that too.
Okay, so funny, just before you go on, I just have to interject for 1 second and say that I said that I've had multiple copies of this on multiple formats over the years. I bought when a video store was going out of business, an old rental VHS, and they put out a like box set on VHS of all the movies.
Yeah.
And until that came out on DVD, I'm pretty sure that was not there. I'm pretty sure they must have like edited it out or something.
Stop it.
Because the first time I ever saw it was in like 2000 or whenever the DVD came out. I'm telling you right now, either
really?
that or the VHS was just so bad quality. But like you can very clearly see it in his face. And I remember going, oh my God, he's got a tear tattoo. I've seen this movie already like 50 times by that point.
They do like a zoom up of it too.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh yeah, check out this hardcore
I'm
guys.
telling you, there's no way that in the original VHSs that was not there.
Maybe in his dreams, he's hot. And he's bad.
Yeah.
But I want to blow my load right now. I got to talk about the sleepwalking scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I lost my goddamn mind. I was like, this is insane. First of all, we'll just go back to the claymation of like the marionettes. So cool. It was reminding me of Beetlejuice a little bit. Like, you know,
it kind of
like
had that Burton-y vibe,
Yeah. I thought that was so cool, and like I said, Freddy just looks so good, and they're doing so many inventive things. But when they take like this guy's like his veins,
oh
his
my God, the shot of his feet on the floor when he's walking and the blood dripping off.
Oh, it is
such a good effect.
Yeah,
it is so gnarly. And then he's like, Freddy's, you know, he's puppeteering this guy and using his veins as like the strings and, you know, getting him to sleepwalk all the way to the top. And just the shot of Freddy like above the building with like his fingers and like dangling this guy until he jumps off. It's just like one of the most powerful things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is the best thing I've ever fucking seen in my life. This is so cool.
Yeah. I've actually got a note about how much, like, I love that, like, the kill and the effects and everything about it is just so brilliant. But I think that's such a great scene in general, because the other aspect of that I think is really brilliant and really powerful is how immediately, and it's like so emotional, they like rally the kids together, and that scene when they all run in and they're like smashed out the window and they're all screaming and like distraught and watching this happen is so fucking emotional and powerful to me. I'm like, oh my God, like these kids, like literally they're there for each other. Like nobody else is there for them. The adults don't give a fuck, but like they are there for each other. And I just thought that was so powerful. And it was like so devastating watching them, you know, watch one of their friends die, and they know that he's not killing himself, that he's being murdered, but like it's no less devastating because of that. It's like, oh, it's just such a powerful scene. Like when he's running around, like banging on the doors and stuff, and they're all just screaming at the window. I'm like, I've seen it like 80 million times, and even when I rewatched it yesterday, I was like, I found myself kind of like tearing up a little bit. I was like, oh my God, these kids are so good for each other.
Yeah, and the way they're treated after that, the way that they treat, like the adults treat his death as a suicide, and they call him a coward and everything. And no one's there for those kids. They have to help each other, and that was just crazy.
For as funny as the kills can sometimes be in this movie with Freddy cracking one-liners and everything, I think it's really smart and really effective that the way that Freddy Krueger is killing all of these kids is playing into their own either mental illnesses or their own struggles that they've had. They're so specific to the character details of each teenager. And I think that that's both very imaginative, and it gives you a better window into who each character is. We'll get into that a bit with like each character, I'm sure, but like, it's really effective here, you know, like this kid's struggling with sleepwalking, and like maybe he's not actually struggling with sleepwalking, and it's just an issue of Freddy Krueger manipulating him while he sleeps and he can't wake up, and it's really terrifying. You know, this movie has a lot of comedic elements, but it's not short on things that are like genuinely unsettling as well, and I do think that this is one of the more unsettling moments in the entire franchise.
And some of the kids' deaths, like, totally preventable. Like, Will, obviously, you know, like, he's in the wheelchair, plays D&D and stuff. And, I mean, Will probably would have lived if he wasn't such a fucking nerd. I mean, that's what happens when you play D&D, guys. It's a warning for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I played D&D once or twice as a kid, but...
Rose kidding.
Yeah, just kidding. No, but Joey, I mean, Joey to me is like the one of the other iconic kills. Obviously, the sleepwalk kill to me is also the most iconic in this for me. But Joey, you know, did he die happy? Maybe he's not even upset he died. He got to see some nurse titties before.
But he didn't die. He got kidnapped, remember?
Before he got kidnapped, you know what I mean? Like when he got taken in the dream or whatever. Like
put into a coma, yeah.
Do you think maybe he thought the coma was worth it? Like, you know, that was kind of what he wanted. He kind of got what he wanted. And then, you know, he had to pay a little price for it. He got to live after. So, you know, not such a bad time for him, right? Like, it's all right.
So I've seen pictures over the years online of like, they fully had a shot. You know how like when she like spits out the tongues and he's tied to the bed, and then she gets up and then it cuts and it's Freddy, you know, with his hat on and everything. They did a shot where when he stands up, it's the nurse's like banging body. Like it's essentially the actress that played her with Freddy's makeup and head on. I have seen a picture of it. It exists. And I read somewhere a couple days ago that they did shoot that scene and then somebody thought it like looked stupid or, you know, took away from it or something. So they were like, no, cut it out.
I think she was only in 2 movies. I think this and then another one that wasn't as popular. So, you know, I just think that must have been awesome if that was your mom. And then all your friends just watch this movie all the time. And the one movie your mom's in, she's just the, you know, banging body nurse that shows her tits to a young kid. With the tongues. Spitting tongues.
Also, the tongues were so cool.
I know. Like, they look amazing. Like, this was 1987. And I mean, listen, they had more of a budget than the other 2 movies, but you could still tell, like, they were not working with, you know, Marvel amount of money here. Like, you know, that shit looked so good.
We've gotten this far. We haven't said anything about Jennifer. Obviously, I would say Jennifer, you know, I say the sleepwalking for me is the iconic. I'd say Jennifer's death is the iconic death of this film. Obviously, with, you know, giving her one-liner, it's all from the prime time, bitch. who I thought was interesting on special features. Like, Robert Englund claims that's the only line that he improvised. But it seems like he's the only one that's going with that story. Everyone else says it was in the script. So, give it to our boy Robert Englund. Just say okay.
He deserves it. He carried the whole franchise, obviously.
And I will say, it's very interesting because, for this franchise that's, become so comedic, so one-linery, like, I thought it was interesting the special features like Robert Englund being interviewed, like, very gracious to the writer, saying, like, I'm not a improvisation type actor. Like, all these one-liners are usually written. I'm just reading what's written for me. And then speaking of, Robert Englund and Freddy, that was kind of, it didn't really bug me, but the thing I noticed, because like I said, we're having this transition in the film of, I almost say, Freddy becoming Robert Englund, like having that personality and kind of wit and charm. But you could tell, because there's definitely a couple different vocal performances in this one, where 1 and 2, Freddy's very deep voice, like they obviously alter his voice a bit, kind of lower it an octave, and they do that in this. But then as it gets sillier, you notice that effect kind of goes away, and then it's actually just Robert's voice, which they kind of just carry on, really. I feel until New Nightmare, they kind of bring that effect back in when they're trying to make him a little more menacing, more like the original. Yeah, like I just something I noticed in this that was interesting.
Oh yeah, I think of this scene, actually, Will's death. He does both of that because at the very beginning of that scene, which is I'm not gonna go on, but I have like 18 notes about how fucking beautifully lit this movie is. Mm-hmm. Like, you will be lit from the back, there'll be this insane light in the back, and yet it's still lit so beautifully that you can see the actors' faces. Like, this is when they actually knew how to light movies, and it was very moody.
It's a shame that Colton's not here. You'd think he'd like a movie like this a whole lot. Yeah, how good the cinematography is.
Technically, it's like actually astounding. I think it's like a stunning feat. But so that scene in particular, besides being well lit, he does do that voice thing, because at the very beginning of it, he's like, but when you wake up, like it's very low and like growly, and at the end he's like, it's the chair for you, kid. It's like very much like higher and more playful. And you're right, I didn't really think about it, but like he does slip into that sometimes during this, depending on the like context. So that's interesting. Next time I watch it, I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to that.
I'm just going through notes. I'm thinking the main things we haven't really hit yet. I mean, no one bringing up Taran yet.
Okay, so you mentioned like having like a favorite character of this, and I'm under the assumption that Taran is Mike's favorite character and Jill's and mine. Like, am I correct?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, there's a reason why I wear my Taran shirt that you gave me literally once a week. It's already in tatters, and it's only about 3 months old.
She's incredible. I love her.
She's for the gays and the girls and the gays.
That's right.
She's great. Another great kill. Obviously, Freddy turning the finger hands and the needle hands. I think I own this like NECA figure like from forever ago, because I'm pretty sure I have them with the needle hands.
That's cool.
Yeah, this to me is like the prime example in this film of the kills to come in the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. Like where we get, her injection sites like puckering and all that kind of like.
Which is horrifying, by the way. Like absolutely horrifying. Imagine your track marks like smacking their lips.
Imagine if you had track marks and then all you heard was the same sound that you heard listening to podcasts of Mike eating Kraft dinner. And imagine they weren't hungry for heroin or anything. They were hungry for Kraft dinner. You have to feed them pots of Kraft dinner.
You just put a noodle up and it just like disappeared.
Oh my goodness.
My jaw is on the floor. You can't see it, but my jaw is on the goddamn floor.
So we now have a great mental image of what the Canadian reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street would look like.
Yep, Kraft Dinner.
Collab with Kraft Dinner.
Yeah. I mean, do we want to have a more formal discussion on the Dokken song? Like, obviously, the music. We said we were banging it out. It's a banger. I mean, this is coming from a guy, like, I don't know, there's not a lot of, metal, like heavy metal I like in the 80s. It's not really my genre. And even I'm like, this is a banger. It's a heater.
Yeah. I had the, FYI, I probably still have it somewhere. It was a little, like, cassette EP that had the 3 songs. Well, okay, so technically I think now they only use 2 because at the beginning, so we never even talked about how, speaking of bangers, the opening sequence of this movie is one of my favorite opening sequences ever. But when they cut to her, right as her mom comes home and it cuts to the Dokken song on the boombox. On the VHS, again, they played a different Dokken song.
Yeah.
It wasn't Into the Fire, it was another one. But I had the little EP that had Dream Warriors and those 2 songs on it. And I bought it at Sam the Record Man, which RIP no longer exists. But was a great Canadian music chain for anybody out there not from Canada.
I think I bought, what were they called next? that Too Close song?
Yeah.
I bought their first album, which I owned 8 copies of. Every time I lose it, I rebuy it. But
Jesus.
I think that was my first purchase ever at Sam the Record Man, was that. Yeah.
I remember buying that with my allowance and then bringing it to... we'd spend, all of our vacation time and like long weekends and stuff out around the bay, as we say, out in the country with like my cousins and like my aunts and uncles and stuff. And
the country,
they were all either into, in like the 80s and 90s, it was all hair metal and big hair country like Reba and all that, which is why I love Reba. But I will never forget, usually I was listening to like whatever, like fruity woman pop music. I'd have
Still
like my Belinda Carlisle cassette or whatever that I made everybody listen to, Mary J. Blige. But I'll never forget when I bought the Dokken cassette and I started listening to it, and 2 of my older male cousins were like, "Oh my God, you like Dokken? No way!" And I'm like, I only know this song by them, but thank you for now finally thinking that I'm cool.
That's the way it is around the bay.
I know it is. I was like,
Can
okay,
confirm.
cool. So yeah, I just had to buy a hair metal tape, and my cousins finally thought I was not a total loser. Well, I want to say a lot of things, but we don't have 7 hours. I'm not going to talk about all the outfits. I won't. I started an Instagram. Well, okay, I didn't start it. I reserved the name of an Instagram where I was just going to post pictures of every outfit from this movie. But anyway, I never did anything with it. We'll see what happens. But one of my favorite things about this movie that I think is very underrated and is kind of hard to miss because they always happen right before something big and cool and nastier happens. But like, can we talk for a moment about the transitions in this movie? Either the transitions between locations or between waking and dreaming. They're really cool and really kind of like under talked about, underrated. Like, when Kristen's in the hospital and she's, sees the bloody, broken down, melting tricycle, and she backs out through the hospital door, and then the busted up Freddy house door slams in her face, and then she's inside. Like, brilliant. When she jumps through her bedroom window and smashes through into the house.
That was crazy, by the way.
Awesome. When Nancy falls in a chair and then smashes out a window or out of a mirror, just all of these really cool transitions. People just don't talk about. I'm like, this is one of my favorite. I think the aesthetic and the visual language of this movie, and all the broken glass everywhere and cuts and
the hypnosis too. The hypnosis transition.
Exactly. Yes. You don't even notice it. It's literally a pendulum.
Yeah.
And he's counting back, and then they're also playing the music for 1, 2, 3.
But it's done in
smart.
Yeah. Angelo Badalamenti, tasty.
Yeah, Angelo Badalamenti. I want to talk about him for 2 seconds because he does an incredible job with the score here. He's one of my favorite musical composers in movies because he goes on to work with David Lynch.
Lynch!
And does Twin Peaks, which is a genre of music unto itself, which is all over everything now in dream pop and pop music and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Badalamenti's score here, and I think it totally adds to the effect alongside the heavy music of Dokken. It's such a cool soundtrack. And just to add on to Mike's point of the transitions and everything, I love how this film melds the dream world with the real world in a way where it's not totally... they're not totally distinguished between one another from scene to scene. Like, there are certain scenes where you don't know if you're in one or the other. But when it does delve into the dream world completely, like, it sometimes does it in such a way that's so pronounced, and the sets are so gothic and so extravagant and beautiful. And, like, I just want to, like, shout out the sets, because I think that this is a beautiful horror movie to just dwell in, because it just has a really haunted feeling and a really specific character to the way that the actual look and feel of the film is, in the actual architecture and the interior design and everything. It's just, it's so beautifully constructed. It's so precise. It has such an intuition with the characters and what they're feeling. And I love what they do later on, where they kind of lean into that even more with the way that the climax of the movie is done with these mirror effects of being pulled in and out of mirrors in an effect that I think still holds up today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that effect looks hokey or dated. It just looks genuinely really cool, and I love all of those things about this movie.
Yeah, I had a note in the middle that just says, and I don't talk about it as much anymore, I guess because Exilia's not on here to, like, egg me on, because she was also, but, like, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of this podcast, like, the lifespan of it, like, just blowing my wad over, like, the architecture and stuff, but, like, I'm like, I love cool fucking doors in movies, and there are multiple cool doors in this. And, like, to your point, near the end, you know, when they're trapped in the labyrinth, the dream house labyrinth, and they meet up, and then the fucking door to the boiler room appears just hanging in the middle. I think that is such a stunning, like, beautiful shot and a beautiful moment and a cool effect. And it just gives me chills every time I see it. Like, when that fucking metal door just appears in the middle of that rotten, fucking decayed, dusty nursery, like, it just blows my mind. I'm like, this is just the mind of the people who made this image. Like, just, I want to live in it. And then, you know, it opens up and it's that, like, fucking Bava red, like, Carrie at the prom fucking lighting, and that goddamn nightmarish, you know, the set of spiral stairs going down into the, like, steam. Oof, Jesus Christ. I'm just like, ugh, I love it.
I was going to say just about the set and stuff. I know Robert Englund said that the first two were done on, like, traditional sound stages and stuff like that. And he was saying that this was the first one that, and maybe the only one, I don't know, he was just talking about this one, but saying that they shot, like, in, like, an industrial space. He was saying that it was just different because he was used to shooting these, like, on lots and stuff, and this was just, like, they got, like, a grimy warehouse and, you know, turned it into a psych ward and stuff, and I think it really does show, because, I think the sets are amazing.
I just remembered two scenes. I'm sorry. The first one, I wanted to talk about Kristen's, like, bathroom scene where she turns on the faucet, and it's, like, those white, like, with the 4, like, little things sticking out. I just like grew up with those, and when they, like, trap her hands in there, just so cool. Just so much cool stuff with Freddy. I just love that scene, and also with, like, Nancy's old house, they did so much cool stuff with that.
Did you notice, and I've watched this so many times, and I only noticed this, like, maybe 2 times I watched it ago, that, like, when her hand is trapped in that, and, like, it comes up and it's, like, a bone, but it's actually, like, the bone is, like, made out of, like, copper piping.
Yeah.
So it looks like a bone, but also the copper piping, and it's just so weird because I watched it 100 times when I was young and never noticed, like, oh yeah, the bone is made out of the copper pipes that would be, like, underneath the sink.
There's just like
I'm
so
such
much,
an idiot. It's just like such a little detail. Yeah, it's just
everything.
Anyway,
is just
sorry,
so...
I didn't want to interrupt.
No, it's so beautiful. And the other scene that I really liked is when Freddy has like all of the kids' faces like protruding out of his like stomach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's like the embodiment of all of these children's nightmares. And like, that's what Freddy is, right? Like, he's in your nightmares. And I just thought that was like such a cool visual, but also had that double meaning of like what Freddy kind of stands for. And,
yeah, it's like what he took from them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm getting teared up. This movie is hot.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Rowan, do you think that particular image was ripped off in Ernest Scared Stupid when the trolls like take the kids?
Obviously. Ernest Scared Stupid, the blueprint for most good movies. Trust me. Yeah. I will say.
I had to bring it up. I know you're a huge Ernest.
Yeah. I will say. Just be prepared, because for how long has this podcast been going on? Ernest Scared Stupid has not come off my list of movies to review at some point. So it will happen. So yeah, with that, why don't we land the plane and get into rating this?
Yapping.
So if you're new to the podcast, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. It's hard to pick who's the most passionate about this. I'm going to go with Mike, though, because he has to set the tone. Mike, what would you give 1987's A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors?
Okay, let me get my pros and cons column from my notes here. A fucking slay. Slay. Listen, to me, it is the kind of embodiment of everything that was good about late 80s horror. I think to get to the third one in a franchise that became as popular as quick as that did, and have that level of like quality and craftsmanship and acting and just the alchemy of all those things together is like really special. Because if you look at like by this time they were on like the 5th or 6th Friday the 13th, and by then the quality of that series had dipped precipitously, as much as I love it. But I feel like 1, 2, and 3 are all equally good, in my opinion, and they're like a holy trinity. They're just 3 different points on like that triangle. But this is truly one of my favorite movies of all time, and I do think that it is just as good as the first. And some days I think it's better, depending on my mood. I love everything about it. I love the soundtrack, the acting, the writing, the cinematography, the sets, the clothes, the poster. The poster is like, obviously, I could just talk all day about. I think they don't do artwork like that anymore. You know, look at movies now. Like when do you have an actual painter paint a poster like that? And it's surreal and bizarre. Everything about it is slay. I think it's such a like surreal mind fuck. But yet still remains like kind of grounded in like commercial horror filmmaking, that it's not, you know, like some Ken Russell movie or something. Yeah, slay. I will watch it for the rest of my life, like over and over. What about you, Willow?
It's a slay for me as well. I've seen this movie so many times, and I never get tired of watching it. I know that we watched it together earlier this year, Mike, and it's just one of those movies it's emblematic of how much fun the late 80s horror film could be. It's genuinely scary. It's inventive. There's so much imagination in the film. The characters are dynamic. I'm not sure you could ask for too much more of a slasher sequel. I do think I probably prefer the first 2 Nightmare on Elm Street films, but like we're splitting hairs there. Like I'm quite fond of the first 4 of these. I think 4 is really underrated. When y'all get to that one, when y'all get to that one, like I may try to like be on that one too, because I want to make my case for that movie, because it's
me too.
It's under discussed. I think there's this idea that these movies fall off after the 3rd one, but I think that up through at least the 4th one, there's still a lot to love. But yeah, I love this one. I put Dream Warriors on my Halloween playlist every year. I love Heather Langenkamp. I love Robert Englund. It's just, it's one of those movies that's like, it's eternally fun, and I'm glad that it's one of those movies that I can come back to again and again, because I find that I never get tired of it. What about you, Jill?
When I put this movie on, and right before the title card, there's a quote from Edgar Allan Poe, where it says, "Sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe them." But yeah, it just really set the tone for this movie. To me, I was just kind of in love with it the whole time. I think it is nightmare fuel in the very best way. Everything is terrifying. It's dark, it's gritty, it's funny, it's edgy. I love the cast, I love the story, I love the way everything looks. And also, I didn't talk about this, but the intro scene where Kristen is in that dream or nightmare sequence, and she's going into Nancy's old house, and you have the kids outside doing the chants and everything. That was so good. And like the little girl and the tricycle and everything. Yeah. Just Christ, amazing. So yeah, for me, it's obviously going to be a sleigh. This is my favorite so far. I do really love the original, but I honestly have a better time watching this one. So definitely has a lot of rewatch value, I think. But Rowan, what about you?
So I'm gonna I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna give it a yay. I really like this one, but I will say, there's probably 4 that I like better than this one. The one, and there's definitely, one, I kind of played my hand pretty early there, where there's one that just has like a nostalgia for me, that this one doesn't hold. Obviously with like Freddy's Dead. It has a special place in my heart. I'm a huge fan of 2. Like I said, Willow, you're preaching to the choir. I'm a massive, massive fan of 4. And I love the first one. And like I said, at the beginning of the episode, this is a franchise that I think you end up watching all of them when you watch one of them. Because like, do they drop off at some point? Yeah. But, they're still fun. Like, I think this is just a fun franchise that's very self-aware of, what it is and how goofy it is. But yeah, so I'm going to give it a yay just because, like I said, I do like ones better than this one. Like, number 2, I like a lot better than I like this one. Number 2, and it's definitely a sleigh. I can't even remember if I gave the first one a sleigh. I'm sure I did, because I really enjoy the first one, which has been different in recent years, because I used to not really care about the first one overly growing up. And then as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed the first one a lot more. So if I didn't, it's definitely grown into a sleigh for me. So you know what? 3 sleighs and a yay. I think that's going to average out very, very nicely for A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I think if you're in number 3, like 1 sleigh is all they're really looking for. Just like give them a little glimmer of hope. But there's a reason people love this one. And with that, we gave you our opinion, so we asked what your opinion of this was, and as I quickly opened the stuff up, see who wrote in, we had Melanie write in, and she said, I still haven't watched this one. Mike is in shock and awe that someone exists that has never seen it before.
It's time.
Yeah, I mean, what are you waiting for? Open her up, see if you like it. It's very high praise over here, so. And then we had a response over on Slasher from LA Frankenstein. And they said, it's simultaneously the best one after the original and also the one that really solidified the stand-up comedian killer aspect of Freddy that kind of ruined it. Which I feel like that's kind of what I touched on in the intro before the review, was just, this is kind of where we get into Funny Freddy. And I know there's a big section of people that don't like Funny Freddy and want these to be very serious. So I can see where you would think, this got ruined. And then before we go over the horrific hotline, we did have a question come in for the squad, and we kind of already answered it, but we can just reiterate it again. Terpesta wrote in and said, I need to know the gang's thoughts on the famous Dokken tune for this movie. And I think we answered it.
Yeah, we pumped ourselves up. Like, literally, we were all four sitting here watching the video and just gagging at it. So.
Transfixed. Yeah, we were so into it.
Exactly. So with that, we're going to go on to the horrific hotline, where we have a message from Horror Hound Nicholas, as always. So let's see what Nicholas had to say.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is, as the number suggests, also my third favorite Nightmare movie after, well, the perfect first movie and Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I think is really good, really entertaining. Which I also think about the third Nightmare movie. There is one thing I don't like that much. I used to love it as a teenager, but not anymore. It's especially in the third act when the Dream Warriors start to become like a wizard who looks like a Halloween costume and a A-Team Mr. T dude. Not too much into that we are now superheroes fighting against Freddy in these costumes. I would have liked it better if they just were themselves and not this persona they create in their dreams. Other than that, I really enjoy the movie. I think the first 45 minutes to an hour are really strong. It's great to see John Saxon and Heather Langenkamp back in a Nightmare movie in such interesting supporting roles. And it builds on the lore of the first movie, especially ignoring the very weird, in my opinion still good, but weird second movie completely, and just building on what we got in the first movie, adding something to it. The entire idea of Freddy's backstory with his mother and the crazy people sits wrong with me, to be honest. That's also something I didn't like, didn't need to have that. But other than that, really cool movie, some great nightmare sequences, and some incredible kills with the primetime bitch TV kill, obviously, as well as the string kill where he uses one of the kids as a puppet. So it's gonna be a very strong yay for me, with a few things I mentioned holding it back from the slay I probably would have given it as a teenager, and the slay that at least the first Nightmare movie definitely still has.
So there we go, Nicholas. I don't know if Mike will ever listen to one of your voicemails again. I think he's against all who have anything negative to say. Hopefully you can win him back.
It's okay. I just have to pick my jaw up from the floor. It's fine.
Not the outfits. Not slander to the outfits, Nicholas.
No, I went from listening, intently to just jaw on the floor instantly.
But if you want to call into the horrific hotline, you can, like Nicholas, you can do so by just messaging us a voice note on through email at itslatespodcast@gmail.com, or message it to us like any of the social media. Just get it to us somehow. We'll figure out a way to play it on the podcast. And if you're not following us on social media, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Slasher, Tumblr, Bluesky, Threads, Letterboxd. I mean, did I already say Instagram? I'm sure I did. There's just so many. I go over and over them in my head. But yeah, follow us at It Slays Podcast. We're everywhere. Jill, do you want to tell the people how to become a lovely horror hound like Nicholas?
Yeah, if you would like to join the ranks of our horror hounds like Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Sacrotype, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose the tier that works best for you. Perks include 48-hour early access to episodes of this main show and access to our Patreon exclusive show, Stream Screams, hosted by Rowan and I, as well as the ability to pick a movie for us to review. Now, Rowan, if Dream Warriors is not on this playlist, we are staging a walkout.
Dream Warriors, I'm proud to announce, is already on the playlist. It was on there when we created it. If you want to get your spooky music on, you can go to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that I just mentioned. Go click the Linktree link in the bio to take you directly there. We upload scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So yeah, follow the playlist. We update it regularly and get spooky music on, because why the hell not? And before we announce the next film, I wanted to clear some room. Willow, you got anything you want to talk about the book? Do you want to promo anything?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote a book called Corpses, Fools, and Monsters, The History and Future of Transness in Cinema. It's now in its second printing. You can find it anywhere you buy books. We are having an event in Chicago on December 3rd at the Music Box Theater, playing a Scarecrow in a Garden of Cucumbers, starring the lovely Warhol superstar Holly Woodlawn. It was a previously thought to be lost film. I'm sad to say it's not a horror film, but, go out to the Music Box anyway. They play horror movies all the time. Support your local independent cinemas if you've got one. So yeah, just buy my book, and you can find me all over social media under Willow_Catelyn. That's Catelyn, because I had to be a weird bitch and name myself Caitlin in a weird way. So, just buy my book. Follow me on social media. I'm probably over there posting about horror movies or Godzilla or something.
Or your cat.
Or my cat. Yeah. Kermit.
Your beautiful cat.
My beautiful orange cat. I refer to him on social media as God's favorite orange tabby, and I feel that way about him. He's great. He only tried to pull my television down onto the floor once during this recording.
Oh, very nice. Only once. But yeah, you'll be able to, any of those links that Will was talking about will be in the bio, the descriptions for the episode you're listening right now. So anywhere you'll be able to click on that. All that is left is to announce our upcoming episode. Mike, it is your pick. What will you have us watching?
Okay, so at the beginning of the episode, I kind of alluded to, I'm going to do this one thing. We'll see. And I actually changed my mind.
Always zigzagging every time.
Always zigzagging. But I think everybody will be on board with this. It's thematically and plot-wise linked to what I was going to suggest at the end of the episode. And it is 1971's Daughters of Darkness.
All right.
So get that in your ear and eye holes and whatever other hole. All the holes.
If you like lesbian vampire films, this is the one for you.
Jill is so happy
Thank
right
you.
now.
That's why I picked it. Yeah, it's we were thinking we were gonna do another lesbian vampire film, but I zagged when you thought I was gonna zig.
We'll do them all.
We'll get to them eventually, but
get Daughters of Darkness into your eye holes, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. As always, I am your humble host, Rowan.
Bye, it's Mike.
Bye, it's Jill.
And I'm Willow. I'm on here sometimes.
See you later.